So tonight we get more than applause, we get yay! Excellent, thank you. It's nice to be here. I'm Robert McBride of All Classical Portland. This is Carlos Kalmar.
Hi. Good evening,
Yay.
everybody.
Music director of the Oregon Symphony. You know, we have ideal weather conditions tonight for a bracing Nordic symphony.
It's getting colder,
Yeah,
right?
by the time we leave here tonight, we're going to step outside and it's going to feel like Finland. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Where are the lakes, though? Yeah.
And in case you're wondering, that bright thing in the sky to the east is Jupiter.
Really?
Yeah, looking good tonight. But that's...
I have trouble looking up to the sky when I'm in a car driving. And I think people appreciate that.
Probably, yeah. That's what the moonroof is for, you know? That's how they call it there. You can be looking. All right, well, I'm glad that you're careful about that sort of thing. And we will talk about the Sibelius Symphony No. 1 in the next few minutes, the final piece on the concert tonight. And we will talk about a really impressive performance by Sarah Kwak, our concertmaster. Wow. She's every bit as good standing up there as any other soloist you've had coming in here lately playing the violin.
Yeah, she's a great deal of fun.
Oh, yeah, in a Wieniawski concerto. But we start with music by the guy you've never heard of, named Glanert.
Detlev
Glanert from Hamburg, where I read today, by the way, that they're going to do away with all cars in Hamburg within the next few years. They're going to, in a big part of Hamburg, they're going to say you can walk, you can ride your bike, you can take public transportation, and that's it.
And you can take a boat, I hope. There is a little bit of a river in the middle.
Hamburg's close to the ocean, right? To the North Sea?
Yeah, but it's on a river. You have to
so
actually...
it's sort of like Portland, kind of.
A little less, and the different. Oh, that would be actually cool. Why don't we do that here with the Columbia, meaning right there on the border to Washington? We put an enormous port. I mean, the port of Hamburg is one of the biggest ports in Europe, probably.
And it's the second largest city, which I didn't know until today.
I don't know that either.
So Berlin being the big one.
I would have guessed Munich, but okay. Okay, Detlev Glanert from Hamburg, before we digress, because I have stories. I lived for 5 years, in part, in Hamburg. So I know that city very well. It's a beautiful city. And Detlev Glanert is from there. And actually, we owe it to the artistic administrator of the Oregon Symphony, to Charles, who one day, he sometimes does this, that he says, Carlos, here is a tape. You should listen to this piece. I knew by that time the name of Detlev Glanert, but I thought, German composer, great.
50-something.
Yeah, I didn't know that much about his music.
So he's about the same age as you are.
Yeah, yeah. Although he
But he started later.
He was born in 1960, so he's from the 60s. I mean, we are from the 50s, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a bit of a head start on you, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
What is the point anyway? Do we have a point?
Yeah,
Does anybody have a point? All right.
So, Detlev Glanert. This is a guy who started really being very serious about music and writing music fairly late in his life. When he got very serious and starting studying, he studied amongst others, he got to Hans Werner Henze. Hans Werner Henze, undoubtedly to this day, leading man in German composition. You have to understand that in Germany there are still to this day several ways how to go about music. There are, without getting too technical, there are the ones that I call the approachables, meaning the ones where the way they treat instruments, the way they write is actually coming from ancient times, and it's just a very modern way of utilizing the orchestra and utilizing the sources, such as Hans Werner Henze and Detlev Glanert. Whereas are also others who go way into avant-garde. Herbert Lachemann, if you ever heard that name. If you ever, well, you are not going to remember unless you check it out on the web, what I just said. Herbert Lachemann. Very interesting guy who starts to utilize instruments and orchestras in a very different way than you expect. Meaning they make noises sometimes, utilizing the instrument. Think that others simply don't ask, and their way of understanding what music is about is very, very, very modern. It's interesting. It's a phenomenon. But Detlev Glanert so went to Hans-Werner Henze, and for 3 years he decided that he was going to write like his teacher. He voluntarily abandoned his own personality while searching for exactly the same thing, which is his own way of writing music. And you might think that is a kind of odd way. It's like a poet who wants to be a poet, and the first thing he does is study 3 years, well, this is many, many years ago, study 3 years with Robert Frost and write like Robert Frost, and then going on to write like, I don't know, Indiana Jones or somewhere. Okay, maybe not. But that is what Glanert had in mind. And actually that is an interesting idea, and it's something that the interesting point of this is that he's so open about it. It's not the fact that he did it, because when we are young and we are very inexperienced in what we actually do, we all are going to take our first steps as composers by writing like something we studied. Happens all the time until it happens with the really good ones, that they find their voice. That is why, in the end, sometimes with very early pieces by composers, you say, oh, you can hear already Beethoven. Let's just take one, Beethoven. Undoubtedly, a man with a voice, and a man with a voice of his own. Distinctively Beethoven. Well, when you look at the very early pieces, very early string quartets, Symphony No. 1 is one. It sounds like Beethoven, but there is Haydn and here, sitting here, and probably Mozart sitting there looking like, what the hell are you doing? And I mean, for Beethoven, it was never an issue, because that's how you do it, and you learn as you go. And that is what Glanert did. Actually, there is this story that I always like to tell. When Richard Strauss was a very, very young composer, he got to meet Johannes Brahms, who was undoubtedly the great and very, very stern man with very strong opinions. And Strauss gave him a score of his to read, meaning a symphony this thick with enormous instrumentation. And Brahms looked it over and then said, listen, young man, you should go home and take the waltzes that Schubert wrote for piano that are 16 bars long. And Brahms said to Strauss, try to invent melodies like that. Meaning, go back to the basics, go back to 100 years ago or such a thing, and go back to invent, instead of writing an entire symphony that lasts 40 minutes, try to write something that is 25 seconds, but good. And of course, as we know, Strauss said, thank you very much, doctor, went home and continued writing like he wanted to write. But the point is, of course, first try to imitate something that is already there, and then look for your own road. And in terms of Detlev Glanert, that is what he did. And I think he has a point of view and a strong voice. I mean, you heard the piece.
Yeah, and I thought of two dead composers who I think would really like Glanert's music.
Okay.
Alban Berg and Benjamin Britten.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Not that it
I like it.
totally sounds like them, but enough that I think they'd dig it.
Actually, that is an interesting analogy because Alban Berg somehow 12-tone music, but not always, but incredibly expressive. And of course, Benjamin Britten, whom we just celebrated last year, that is a real genius. And Glanert sounds, I actually can see more Alban Berg than Benjamin Britten, because the colors by Benjamin Britten are a little mellower. It's less, I wouldn't, yeah, maybe you say harsh. Glanert is a little more intellectual in a very positive way. When you said two composers came to your mind, I was thinking, hopefully you don't say Hindemith, because but it's the German tradition of writing.
No, I said two composers I actually like.
I need one day. I have actually never conducted Hindemith in
Fine.
Portland. Oh no,
You're batting 1,000 so far.
Trust me, you need that. You need, Hindemith.
Actually, the Matthias der Mahler Symphony, I would love if you would do that.
Maybe one day, but there is more. Hindemith is very good music. So, Glanert is also good music. So what you have to expect is a very expansive piece about a body of water. In this case, he calls it a river. And this is kind of an extract, if you will, from an opera that he wrote, The Wooden Ship. And it's just kind of orchestral extract from that opera. And it deals with the idea of water. And amongst many things that I like about this piece is when you look at huge body of water, sometimes you can see incredibly calm, this calmness of water just sitting there, but being enormous. And then you see, maybe, if you have the time, some little movement, and then the other part of the water that you can easily associate, especially living in Portland, being so close to the ocean, is the power of water. Every time you look at the ocean, or if you ever dare to get in there, you feel so small, and you realize that we are so little, and it washes over you. And that is something that this piece actually does. This piece, which starts so quietly and dark, very dark at the beginning, and ends very quietly, develops more and more this thing that comes at all of us, washes over us, and then retracts like water. I would personally not call this a symphonic poem. It doesn't describe things per se where you say, oh, this is a wave, here is somebody surfing, or whatever you can think about water. Here we are just fishing. I think it doesn't do that. It's just the idea of water in the back of your head, and then let's go and enjoy some music. It's a modern piece. I mean, it's fairly recent when he wrote it, but and it uses instrument in such a great way. It's very colorful.
And I think it's a great counterpoint to the Sibelius Symphony on the second half, because they both have this quality of a large landscape about them. But let's talk about Sarah Kwak, who came here from Minnesota, from the Minnesota Orchestra, to be the concertmaster of the Oregon Symphony. And she's making her official concerto debut with the Concerto No. 2 by Wieniawski. The concertmaster is the first of the first violinists. Mm-hmm. She is your literally left-hand man, but figuratively right-hand man, right? Tell us what a concertmaster does.
A concertmaster in the is the leader of the orchestra.
And that's what they call them in England. They're called they're called
Yeah,
the leader.
they are called leader. So the role of the concertmaster, of course, it's the number one of all the violins. So we're going to have, I don't know, 25, 26, some number. It's number one. But it's the job itself is way goes beyond that, because this is the person you connect as a musician aside from hopefully connecting to whoever is waving the stick in front of you. And Sarah has to be a leader for everybody on the stage. If you think about this on a smaller scale, and you think about what actually makes a string quartet work, 2 violins, a viola, a cello, 4 highly trained individuals. In this case, we have 80 or some highly trained individuals, but in a string quartet, the number one violinist leads, meaning gives the entrances, is kind of the leading force as far as phrasing goes. Now, in a role of concertmaster, it's interesting because all of that is true, but the concertmaster has also the role of transmitting, translating through what she does, what she says, to the orchestra, what the conductor actually wants. Meaning that's why she is definitely my right hand. And you cannot by any means put somebody in this job just because it's a good violinist. It's a different thing. There are phenomenal violinists, for example, in this organ symphony. Phenomenal violinists. But we went, and this is actually the third time I led that selection. We went through a long selection process until we said, this is whom we want. And I can say this rightly so, that in the 10 years that I have been here, we have had 3 concertmasters that the orchestra, the members of the orchestra who were on the committee for concertmaster, and I selected, and all 3 of them, very different from each other, were really good. Really. I mean, we were really lucky. Amy was the first, Amy Schwartz-Moretti, wonderful. June Iwasaki, whom I'm sure you remember even better, fantastic concertmaster. And now came a very different type of violinist and personality in Sarah. And I can say that we needed her here, really. And she is so liked by the orchestra because of her leadership skills, because she plays beautifully, and because she's the full package.
She's a very, very nice person. Did she choose this concerto, or did you?
No. This is her making, which I'm very happy about.
Right.
Because for many reasons. First of all, neglected piece to some extent, and second, when, as you already said, you have this German piece at the beginning, landscape, vastness, and you have this big Finnish piece, landscape, vastness, and cold. At the end, in the middle, boy, if we put something like that in the middle, you probably will never take your coat off when you are sitting here. But
so we have this warm-hearted.
it's a completely different type of animal, the Wieniawski. Goes after the Glanert. It's like coming home to some extent. Even it doesn't matter whether you know the Wieniawski or not, but you go places with the Glanert where you have not been at all, literally, and to ideas of sound, and then you come to a piece that is in its own way romantic, very simple. It's a very simple piece, but works so brilliantly. And then Sarah comes and sings, and does some acrobatics too.
It's not so simple for her.
No.
Yeah. And she said that she hadn't looked at the last movement of this piece since she was 15 years old. So
So 10 years ago.
going back in time for her. Yeah. Not as long as it would be for you or me. Yeah. And you studied this in your youth when you were a violinist?
It's because I would dare to say that we all violinists, in the list of pieces that we go through when we study, we go through, I mean, 3 Mozarts, you go through Mendelssohn, etc., and you go at some point through Wieniawski. Certainly you learn the last movement, the one that Sarah was saying, 15, when I was 15 I played that, and then now she plays it again. Great, it's like welcoming somebody that you have missed for too long. And we all study it, and nonetheless it doesn't get played, this piece. And you will judge for yourself. I think it is a piece that should be played here and there. It's undoubtedly, in terms of what does the music say, it's more in the region of simple music, but quality, and more in terms of virtuosic music. It's how can I describe it? You have on one side composers, Beethoven, where everything he writes in his violin concerto serves the purpose of expressiveness in Beethoven style. Then on the other side, you have Paganini, where a lot of what he writes is, wow, did you see that one? And Wieniawski is a little bit in the middle. Has both elements, and the fun thing is, come on, it's a piece that he wrote for Pablo de Sarasate.
Yeah, what a nice thing to do, writing for the competition.
So we, of course, are spreading the word of doing a piece that one great violinist wrote for another great violinist. So we kind of are thinking about phoning Taylor Swift, whether she writes a piece for Britney Spears. Same phenomenon. Okay, they don't write music, never mind.
Yeah. So, how are we doing here? We stuff good. We have some time to talk about Sibelius. Now, Jean Sibelius, the most famous Finnish composer, represents Finland musically more than any other human being. But he was not a provincial composer. He was actually very cosmopolitan. He traveled a lot. He met most of the famous composers of his time. And he studied for a while in Vienna. And I mention that because you did something in this symphony on Saturday night that I really enjoyed. And Carlos studied in Vienna as well. And you brought out a waltzy quality in this 6/8 thing that I'd never heard done quite that way. And it was just so charming and perfect. Thanks.
You did?
Yeah. It sounded, you could hear that little bit of Viennese influence in there, and it was just nice.
You mean a little bit of a lilt?
I suppose so, yes.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And there's a way of shaping a phrase so that as it moves up, you hesitate a little bit before you get that note at the top of the phrase.
And, okay.
Yeah.
It rings a bell.
Yeah. But what you'll really hear in here is Tchaikovsky.
I know you're so clear about
like
that.
the beginning of the second movement is just, it's just Tchaikovsky. But it's beautiful.
It's good Tchaikovsky.
Oh yeah, yeah. He could do worse for influences. And you know what is going to be stuck in your head when you wake up tomorrow morning is the Brucknerian pounding theme in the scherzo of the Sibelius Symphony No. 1. At least it was for me.
So in other words, we have again a composer who definitely has already found his own voice, but still shows influences from the past. It's true, there is this element of Tchaikovsky, and of course the third movement, the scherzo. I remember the first time I conducted this piece, I thought, oh, Bruckner's Second Symphony, just written in a different way, because it's even the same tonality. It just lacks, in terms of Sibelius, it lacks the yodeling element. Well, he's Finnish. I don't know whether they do that. Anyway, and I actually like all these influences because I think that for me this is one of my favorite symphonies. And in terms of conducting Sibelius is actually a very interesting thing because, how can I explain that? There are composers where you rely to a certain flow of energy, and or sometimes they get very fast. Every time I conduct Sibelius, what I relate to is this slowly moving intensity. The best example I can give is actually a piece that we did 2 seasons ago, which was his Symphony No. 7, which is it's his last, and it is only 21 minutes long in one movement, and that movement is slow. And it's in the most positive way that you can imagine. It is like you have been sleeping for a long while and you try to get up very slowly and you feel everything in your body. Has nothing to do with the music by Sibelius. I'm just giving you an analogy. And this idea of vastness and slowly moving things, in case of Sibelius, easily described as nature, is so obvious to me. There is something there, I can't explain. I like the fact that when you said, you heard something Viennese, I thought like, no. Then I understood what you meant. It's what we call rubato, where you don't play everything metronomically the way it's written. You move, because that is what you should be doing with music.
And if you understand the composer's style, then when you do that, it's that extra 1% that a less perceptive conductor wouldn't offer that makes it rise up to artistry.
I would say it's, of course, for me way too far to ever say that I really, really understand a composer, specifically somebody with whom I did not grow up. I did not. When you grow up and you study in Vienna, you do Sibelius? No, Sibelius. That guy far up north. Who is that? We hear Beethoven, Mozart, Brahms, Bruckner, Mahler. That's it. That's what I learned in school. Trust me, it's all true. But Sibelius? The guy that wrote this second symphony that starts with all uppos. So everything where actually I try very hard to relate to the music is something that I hopefully understood while doing and while meeting people. I was in Finland many times.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Actually, end of March, I'm there again with one of my favorite orchestras, which is Lahti.
Have you been to Sibelius's house?
No.
Well, you must go.
If I would have ever time,
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
But no. But the thing with music by Sibelius is it is probably very reflective of the Finnish language in some way, which I have no idea what that means and how. But it also is a reflection on the way Finland looks. And Finland is such a beautiful country, although when you have traveled through parts of Finland, you think it's kind of all the same. I mean, Finland.
Trees and lakes.
Trees, lakes, very few people. Helsinki, but not many people live there. And it's beautiful, and it's soothing, and it's peaceful. And then in the winter, which I mean, this is no surprise, but look, I grew up in South America where I did not see any snow for 15 years because there is no snow in Uruguay. Then I went to Vienna where I saw first time snow and I saw mountains first time. But there is one phenomenon that I relate so much to Finland that I hope it exists. Yeah, I'm sure it exists in some part of the United States, which is you walk on the lake.
Ah, yeah.
Because in the winter it freezes.
Right.
And you can walk forever and ever on the water, the frozen water, and there is nobody there, and it's very quiet. And
That's a great setup
Yeah.
for the symphony that you're going to hear tonight, especially the way the
that is
symphony
the
begins.
exactly.
Ooh la la. But we have to stop. They're getting restless back there. They want to warm
Yeah.
up and be ready to perform for you. Thank you for coming. You're going to love this concert. Carlos Kalmar.
Robert McBride.